that was like exponential growth, was when it comes down to how important your journey is, and I started seeing what it was doing for me. And that became more important than staying here and drinking, not to put anybody down or nothing, but you ultimately do start aligning with people that you resonate with, that are doing the same thing. And that's what happened with this. I mean, I still have my friends in Chicago, but I have great friends that I've connected with throughout the way that are on the same journey that we're on, so.
All right, welcome to the Fit Vegan Podcast. I'm your show host, Maxime Sigouin, and I'm the founder and CEO of Fit Vegan Coaching, a company that is on a mission to help 10,000 people get lean, thrive, and reduce their risk of chronic illnesses by 2033 and 1 million by 2050. I believe that having a fit, healthy body and mind is the foundation to living an incredible life, and this is what the show will give you if you choose to listen and implement. Enjoy the episode and have a great day. All right. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Fit Vegan Podcast. Today, I'm joined by a very special guest and a good friend, Jonny Morelli, aka Jonny Juicer, and he is a health and wellness enthusiast, creator, and coach who started his journey after healing himself through plant-based diet and lifestyle changes. His goal is to help others take control of their health and unlock their true potential and purpose by sharing his journey of what's worked for him in a fun and relatable, creative way. And engaging content with his dog, Noah. So at Noah the Vegan on Instagram, they always create amazing videos together to help inspire others while bringing entertainment and laughs. Jonny, welcome to the show, brother.
Man, it's such a pleasure. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. We got reconnected after, I think, several years at the after party for Christspiracy.
Yes. Yeah. 5 years, literally 5 years, because I recently saw some memories on Instagram, and I was literally like, I think it was last week in Vancouver. So it's been exactly 5 years.
Yeah. And it's crazy how, both of our lives have drastically transformed, and we've kind of gone through our obstacles, and we kind of met each other at the end of all of it. Like, we came out of it, we've done our healing work, and now that's when we reconnected. So I think it was perfect, and I was genuinely super excited to see you at the party.
Yeah, man, it is crazy because, like you said, so many parallels when we were talking about what you were going through, what I was going through, and just I remember giving you a hug, and it's like, it's good to see you in a good place, and it's like I felt you. It's like when you go through stuff, sometimes people can't relate unless they've gone through something similar. So
Yeah.
I felt that, man. It was good connecting with you and talking and just catching up.
Yeah. Well, I'm happy that we get to do it on a even deeper level while it being recorded.
Yeah, for sure.
So
for
the people that are potentially just newer to you, because a lot of my audience online is coming kind of from YouTube, not necessarily on Instagram. So, man, do you mind kind of like diving into your story as to how Jonny Juicer was born into the world?
Yeah, man, absolutely. So, I mean, I guess I'll just start saying, I'm Italian American. I come from an Italian family. Um, and my mom was like the cook of the family, and growing up, lots of meat, dairy, pasta, pizza. And, as far back as I could remember, it was like seventh grade, actually earlier than that, like sixth, seventh grade, I was developing gut issues. I would either have the runs or I would be constipated. And this carried on all during high school. And I had my first colonoscopy in eighth grade, and I had another one in my junior year. And I had leaky gut, irritable bowel syndrome. I was told I was lactose intolerant. I mean, I was told that from a young age. So, I was an athlete in school too. So I wasn't like overweight. I was pretty athletic. Played basketball 4 years, played travel basketball. But again, the gut issues were there. And I just assumed this was something I was born with, and I was just coping with. I take this because I'm not giving up my pizza or my food. And fast forward out of high school, I went to a junior college, and, the problems started getting progressively worse because I was going to Wendy's on the way. Me and my buddy, I'll never forget, we'd get like double cheeseburgers, triple cheeseburgers. fast food junkies. And at that same time, I got tied into working at FedEx. I was a handler for a year, and then I became a driver. So it was a pretty demanding job where, you know, you know, wherever you can get food is where you would get it. I would never plan ahead. I would, go to Speedway. You know, it was a Speedway gas station in Chicago. I'm not sure if they're out in California, and I'd get hot dogs and, string cheese and just beef jerky, whatever I can get my hands on. Big gulps at 7-Eleven. So as you can imagine, things were getting worse. I turned, 21, obviously going out drinking all the time, partying. So, getting in toxic relationships and just not going in the right direction. I didn't really have direction. So I'll fast forward to, what was I, 29? I had just turned 30, and I'll never forget looking at a New Year's pictures of myself. And I'm like, what is going on? Like it was, and I'm like, I need to make a change. And, I was looking at documentaries. I think it was like Vegucated, and there was just a number of them. But the one that I saw that really resonated with me was Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead. Because up until that point, I would work out still in my 20s, and I was beefier and bigger, and I would blend smoothies with whey protein. But I never heard what juicing was. I never even knew I thought juicing was blending, And come to find out, like during my journey, many people think that. So I saw Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead. And, I had developed migraines as well. When I was working at FedEx, there'd be times when my migraines would be so bad, I'd be nauseous. And I'd contact my boss and I'd say, listen, I can't work. I would go to the gas station, get Excedrin migraines, pop them, and I would just lay there, and they'd have what they call a sweep. Another truck would come, put the back end to mine, because it was like the courier trucks, and they'd take all this stuff and take it to the airport. I mean, that's how bad it would get sometimes between that and my gut issues. So I see this documentary, and I'm seeing this guy, for those that aren't familiar, Joe Cross, Australian man, comes to America, does a juice cleanse, and goes around asking people what they think health is. And along the way, he inspires people that had very similar issues that I did, gut issues and migraines. And I'm like, man, this sounds like something I would do. And the next day, I went to get the same juicer from the documentary at Bed Bath & Beyond. And that's when my juicing journey started. I mean, it really didn't kick off for like about 6 months, because I had done, like that weekend, I tried a 3-day juice cleanse. And after the first day, I juiced it for the week, and Monday I was back at work, and Monday was cool. And then day 2, I get to work, I had all my juices with me, and my ex at the time was doing it with me, and she's like, how are you feeling? I'm like, I have a headache, and I'm getting really hungry. And I stopped at a place called Culver's in the Midwest. It's really popular. It's like a fast food burger joint. And I just pigged out, So at that time, I'm like, this doesn't seem normal. So it took me a little bit. It's not like I just got the juicer and, jumped right into it. My life changed. It was a progression. It was trial and error. It was incorporating it. And finally, I got a routine, like I'd say like a year later. I was 31 years old, where I dedicated. I'm like, I'm going to complete this. I really mentally got right. I'm like, I'm going to do this 3-day juice cleanse. And after that, I'm going to incorporate a juice every day. And that's what I did. And from there, that's when everything started kicking off.
Yeah, so that's crazy. So I want to dive into the after, but I want to go back in the beginning. So were you born and raised in the States, or was you born and raised in Italy and you came here when you were younger?
I was born and raised in Chicago.
Okay, in Chicago. And
So I
so,
was born here.
so
Yeah.
you see, was there like a combination of like the Italian culture blended with kind of the American culture in the food when you grew up? Because I don't know if like fast food
Well,
was like as
it's funny you
prominent
say
back
that,
then.
man. Right. And it's so funny you say that, because when I was younger, my parents got divorced at a very young age. I was like 7 years old, and I moved in with my grandparents with my mom. And my grandparents, they came on a boat from Italy. They migrated on a boat in the 1930s, and they brought that Italian culture here. And the food was different. But as the generations, as my mom picked up, the processing of the food became different, and everything was faster. The cheeses, everything started changing. So this was, you're talking 40. I'll be 43 this year, so you're talking like 40 years ago. as times were going on. And yeah, I mean, for the most part, I mean, I would say it was better than fast food, but when I look at it now, I'm like, I wouldn't touch that stuff because I know it would destroy my gut.
Yeah. And you also mentioned that you played ball growing up. I was just interviewing another basketball player, and we talked about like the culture of food in sports, and at least specifically related to basketball, because kind of my only experience with it. It's terrible. I remember going on tournaments, and it's like, yeah, Wendy's, A&W, McDonald's. That's how you're feeling after games. That's how
McDonald's,
you're feeling before the games.
yeah. Gatorade, I mean, God, I mean, I remember our travel team went to Florida, the wide world of sports, and played my junior year. We had a really good travel team, and yeah, same thing. We were just going to fast food and nothing remotely healthy. So you could just imagine. I mean, our metabolism were faster, but man, if they fuel these kids, even nowadays, I mean, because I officiated basketball when I lived in Chicago for like 12 years after high school. So I would see the
Yeah.
kids, fourth grade all the way to eighth grade, and their parents would be in between games and tournaments. They'd be bringing them McDonald's and they'd be chowing down burgers. And I'm like, man, if these kids only knew, because during that time is when my journey started to start. So I'm like,
Yeah, I get it. That's exactly what it was for us as well. You're playing big tournaments, and in between the games, everyone's shouting down on a burger and some fries because I got to get some calories in. But ultimately, like the side effects of it, your gut. Yeah, you feel like shit when you're playing. Like you can do it because you're young, but yeah, you can tell that your body's not functioning optimally at that point. And I feel like I don't know. I haven't watched players play in a long time, like high school and college. But hopefully nutrition is getting a little bit better, and they're kind of learning with, at least with like being on social media and following people like you, and gaining some knowledge.
yeah. I mean, I think the biggest problem is our professional athletes. For example,
Yeah,
like LeBron James will do like a McDonald's commercial, but his wife owns like three juice bars. You know what I'm saying? But are
yeah,
they promoting juice bars and smoothie bowls and stuff like that? So, it's like they're getting paid multi millions of dollars to promote Coca Cola and all these. So that's what the kids are seeing. But
yeah.
unfortunately, it's not how they're fueling their body. I mean, you hear LeBron how much money he spends on his body yearly. So
As a million, the last one I heard was about 1 million that he spends on his body. Um, yeah,
yeah,
and there's more
yeah,
there's more people starting to lead the way, right? With the game changers, like they mentioned, Chris Paul was vegan, Kyrie Irving, Javal McGee. Man, I took my shot this
right.
morning because I sent a DM to all of the vegan NBA players I could find to try to get them on the show. I was like, I'm just shooting my shot, see if I can get one of them, because there needs to be a bigger voice of like sharing that knowledge with the younger generation, because if not, they're stuck in the culture we were stuck in,
Of
which is,
course.
yeah, Mickey D's between games, and you go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, and there's Michael Porter Jr. on the Nuggets. I know he came into the league as a raw vegan because Dr. Doug Graham, I know, was coaching him. And
Yeah,
I think he turned to fish like a year ago because he said it was too difficult. But I do think like a guy like Kyrie he's like the perfect guy to lead the way. Like so many people are drawn to Kyrie, so it would be cool if
yeah. And so let me ask you, so going back to kind of your vegan journey, you mentioned you were about 31 when you transitioned to being vegan. Was that like the full transition at that point?
I just had my 10 year. So I was 32 when I went vegan. I started juicing when I was 31 and went vegetarian, like maybe 6 months into my juicing journey.
Okay. So and that's basically when you became like raw
Yeah.
vegan.
I would say, yeah. So this is what happened. So basically, I saw Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead, dabbled with juicing for a while. Then I became like a juicing extremist. So I started like bringing 60, like this is a 32-ounce mason jar. I'd bring 64-ounce filled with green juice to work. And people would think I was crazy. They're like, this dude's drinking that swamp drink again. And then they thought I was getting sick because, I was like 230. And when
Yeah,
I
I saw
first started doing it,
photos.
I was losing weight fast. I was losing weight fast because I mean I was getting so into it, and then your taste buds start changing. You start having more mental clarity, more energy, more. you just feel amazing. You know, you're so used to fast food and all this junk, all these animal products and processed food. And then all of a sudden you're like, man, I feel better than I ever have. And all my gut issues started subsiding. My migraines were like gone. So I was getting, and this is even before I like fully went vegan, like everything was really getting better. I still had my gut issues because the dairy is what really killed it. But yeah, so
Yeah.
31, I was doing that. I saw forks over knives was what made me go vegetarian. But at the time I saw that, I'm like, hey, I'm going vegetarian. I'll never go vegan though, because I'm Italian. I'm never giving up my cheese. so,
Yeah.
so I was vegetarian for like about 3.5 months. Um, but then I saw Earthlings with my ex-girlfriend, and literally we both cried through it, and we went vegan overnight and never looked back.
Yeah. And ultimately it was the thing that was probably messing up your gut the most, is the last thing that you were holding on to ultimately.
100%, 100%. That's when like everything, yeah, everything changed. Everything changed when I completely, and I mean, and then you change as a person, right? Like we can call it spiritual awakening, whatever you want to call it, but a sense of compassion, a sense of self-love. I mean, obviously because you're fueling your body right, but man, I mean, it was a drastic change. I mean, my body changed, my physical body changed, my relationships changed, my everything. Obviously, I mean, it was pretty awesome. And naturally, when I went vegan, at the time there wasn't, thank God, because I was a junk food addict, there was no Beyond or Impossible or a lot of these processed foods, you know, back then.
Yeah.
Because if it was, maybe I would have just saw that, because when I watched Earthlings, it was more of an ethical decision. I'm like, I don't want to be part of that, you know? It wasn't a health decision. Forks over knives was. And then I saw Earthlings and I'm like, I'm done. Like that's what I needed. So at the time, it could have been very easy to transition into, oh, I'm going to try this Beyond Burger. I'm going to try, you know, but I didn't. There was all that was around back then was like black bean burgers and like Amy's Pizza and stuff like that. So that's why I kind of like gravitated more towards the raw, because
Yeah.
um, the juicing was a huge part of my game. Juices and smoothies. That's how I was doing. I would make a 32-ounce juice or smoothie, and vice versa. And then at night I would just have something cooked, some like sautéed vegetables with rice. I mean, and then eventually it just turned into raw. I started following these people online, like Fully Raw Christina and Dan the Life Regenerator. Those two were like, I would watch their YouTubes every day, man. You know, because when you transition into
Yeah.
this lifestyle, it's like nobody's really, especially the people around you. You know, you're watching all these people every day, and then you go outside in the real world. It's like, whoa, unless you're at the
Yeah.
gym. You know, I mean, now we live in LA, so it's a little more health conscious with people and their physical bodies. But living in Chicago, you go outside and you're
Yeah.
not at the gym, everybody's pretty overweight, you know, and unhealthy.
Yeah. Did you ever follow Durian Ryder and Philly the Banana Girl during those times? Because that was like my era too when I went vegan.
Um, I never followed them like I did Dan and Christina, but
Yeah.
I knew of them. I just resonated more with Dan. Like he was awesome. I mean, he would do a video every day, and he wouldn't even edit it. I mean, and he still does it. He just puts his phone up and he would just start talking. I mean, he biked from LA to New York for the fruit festival on a raw diet. It was insane. I just followed his
Yeah.
journey so long.
So when you went more raw vegan, you're doing more juices and smoothie. Did you start that off in Chicago, or were you already in LA at that point?
No, I started that in Chicago. And again, my girl and I did a challenge. It was, I believe it was, I don't think it was Christina's challenge. It was somebody's challenge though, a 21 day. And I was feeling amazing, and I just kept going. And the rest is history. I mean, I was raw all the way up until I lost my mom. So I went raw, I want to say, because I was raw about 5.5 years. So from 2016 until 2021 or
Yeah.
2020. It was like 2015. I'm sorry, 2015, because I went vegan in 2024. So it was 2015 until 2021. It was like five and a half
Yeah.
years because September 2020.
So the reason I'm asking is because I come from Quebec, Canada. So I'm just like up north from you. I'm pretty close to Chicago. Man, it is cold in winter to be raw vegan. I don't know, for I suffered, man. So how
I
did you handle that?
Dude, I knew you were going to say that. And it's so funny because I would do my fat. So when I went vegan and I fully got a grasp on juicing, I would
Yeah.
fast on the 1st of January every year in Chicago, and I would do extended fasts, like 21 days, 30 days. The longest I did was 40 days, and I have a YouTube video of it, like documenting. I mean, I got down to like 150 pounds in the heart of winter. You know, it was crazy. Or
Yeah.
maybe 145 pounds. I was very skinny, like skin and bones during the fast, but I felt insanely incredible. I mean, I was making a lot of creative content, and um, but the way I did it was I had a really good support system. During that time, my mentor, Karen Calabrese, she had like 3 restaurants open, a wellness center. And when I went raw, you know, I was seeking out the people on YouTube, but also in Chicago. I'm like raw vegan people in Chicago, and Karen came up. And I'll never
Yeah.
forget, I went to see her. She was speaking at a veg fest, and I recorded her, and I tagged her online, and she reached out to me. She's like, love that video you shared, would love to meet you. We connected, and I mean, she became like one of my best friends. I was literally down there. I would drive to like a half hour every day to go see her downtown at her place, and she would give me big boxes of raw food, like gourmet food, on top of the
Yeah.
juices and smoothies I would already have, and I would help her with content, and then I would learn a lot from her. She would teach me all about like hydrocolon therapy and the hyperbaric chambers and all this stuff that she had in her wellness center. So um, it was pretty cool because she was like my best friend. You know, it's like I had
Yeah.
all these friends that I'm still connected to, but you know that I was so connected to because I was going out partying with them. And when I gave up drinking, you know, what do you have in common? You know,
Yeah.
so we would still stay in touch, but I was more dedicated to what this was doing to my life because things really started changing. And obviously, like once I started on social media, you know, things started growing as well. Um, so yeah, like I would say during Chicago, in Chicago, it was easy. It was easy because I was so focused. I was so motivated, and I had an amazing mentor and the support system online. I mean, and when I went raw and when I was vegan, I mean, at that time, there wasn't a lot of influencers like that. There was your, like you said, it was your Durian Rider, it was your Freely the Banana Grows, Fully Raw Christina, it was Dan the Life Regenerator, and I'm talking like raw. And then
Yeah.
that was
Raw
kind of, I mean, there
Vanna.
was
Yeah.
maybe a handful more. Yeah, but yeah, yeah, but
Yeah. I know what happened, but yeah. so let me
yeah.
ask you this. You brought up the friends that you're hanging out with. You stopped drinking. So that kind of ultimately it changed your cycle. So I feel like it's an interesting topic to talk about because a lot of people that just want to go vegan, that just want to eat plant based, they're struggling because all of their friends, they're meat eaters, they're drinking, or they have habits that potentially that doesn't serve them anymore. And so how did you handle that shift of like having your group of friends, but then ultimately your values changing and having to adjust to that?
I'm grateful for this. I'm still really good friends with a lot of those guys, and a lot of those guys don't drink as much, obviously, now because they're in their 40s and they're married and they have families, and we're still connected. But during that time, they supported me. You know, like they supported what I was doing. They saw how much I mean, I lost like at a time, it was like 40, 50 pounds close to, and I just turned into a totally different person, you know? And I realized because when I went vegan, I was still drinking. When I went raw, I stopped. Well, actually, a little before I went raw, I stopped drinking because what I would do is I would get vegan cucumber organic vodka, right? And I would mix it
Yeah.
with something, and I would still go out. But what I noticed was it would still want me to eat bad. It would still, you know, when you're drinking and you're tipsy and drunk or whatever, you want to eat bad. So it started out as, all right, I'm going to stop going out and I'm going to stop drinking for like a few weeks, see how it feels. And honest to God, man, that was like exponential growth was when, you know, and so basically what I'm saying is it comes down to how important your journey is, you know, and I started seeing what it was doing for me. And that became more important than staying here and drinking, not to put anybody down or nothing, but you ultimately do start aligning with people that you resonate with that are doing the same thing. And that's what happened with this. I mean, I still have my friends in Chicago, but I have great friends that I've connected with throughout the way that are on the same journey that we're on, you know? So
Yeah. So I want to talk about athleticism and and muscle building? Because I know that's a topic that comes up often when people talk about being vegan, especially when you talk about being raw vegan. I know you're not necessarily raw anymore, but it's
Right.
obviously a big part. It was a big part of your journey. Did you have did you have any concerns kind of going into it? Because I know like your typical photo that you post online, like you can tell that you were inflamed. You can tell that like you had weight that you wanted to lose, and now you're super lean and you're athletic. So was that ever even a thought, or was it more like, hey, I just don't want my head to hurt. I don't want my stomach to hurt. I just want to feel better.
Honestly, when we're talking about fitness, all I cared about was, hey, I've never had abs like this, and I'm keeping them
Yeah.
effortlessly staying raw, and I was still staying strong. So when I was raw, I was still obviously the health was the most important thing to me. I was feeling incredible, but what my it was just incredible being raw because it's like you could eat as much as you want. You're staying lean, you're staying energized. So that's what was great. And I played a lot of basketball. I mean, I was still playing a lot of basketball up until a couple of years ago. So, I mean, it was like the perfect diet for me for basketball.
Yeah. Well, we got to get you back on the court so you and I can play together when I come down to visit you.
Dude, I've been out here for maybe what 6 years this year, and I still have not connected with people that I've been like comfortable enough to play in a league with. Or I mean, I've had some friends where we'll call each other, "Hey, let's go to the gym," but the game's changed so much, and it's like you go there and you want to get runs, and you got somebody on your team that's jacking a 40 footer and doesn't get back on D, and you're like, man, and it's a waste of time. So that's why I kind of stopped playing ball because I don't have a crew, I'm not playing in leagues, and I started picking up boxing instead. So
Nice. Well, hey, the way basketball has transformed now, you need boxing skills because people are getting pretty rough out there. Um, so
yeah.
yeah, so you brought up a few inspirations. As I was doing some research for the interview, I heard you bring up Ted Carr, and I was like, that name sounds familiar. I remember just seeing this really like skinny guy, and I just go on Instagram. I'm like, holy shit, what happened? He got super jacked. Is that still someone that you kind of look up to? And is there other people that you look up to in the kind of like raw or just slash vegan space?
I mean, I got a lot of respect for Ted. I mean, he's mastered it like down to a science exactly with his intermittent fasting I mean, because I think he was eating cooked for a little bit, but he's been raw, and I mean, he looks jacked. He's really
Yeah.
jacked. So I mean, the biggest inspirations for me, honestly, though, are people that are older than me because I'll be 43, so I look at people that are living and looking good older than me that I can be inspired by. And there's this guy Lou Corona out here. He does these like monthly talks. He's like 71, and this man is doing Superman push-ups and pull-ups and all types of crazy stuff. And he's been a raw vegan since he was 21 years old. He had a tumor growing out of his neck. So I mean,
Dang.
guys like that, like I said, that Dan McDonald, he's been in the game for like 25, 30 years, and he's going to be 50. He looks incredible. I mean, his skin, his body, I mean, so I mean, like I said, I kind of look at those. I mean, like Ted's awesome. Like, don't get me wrong, all these guys are awesome. But for me personally, I'm looking at guys that are older because that's the direction I'm headed. So I want to see what
Yeah.
they're doing and how
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
living.
Yeah. And so
So
talking about that transition, because a lot of people listening, maybe some of them are raw vegan. I think we have several of them, and people are just looking to eat more plant based. Like a hard part is handling social events. And when I was I think I was raw vegan for like 6 months, and it was during the 6 months in winter in Quebec. And then I kind of just bailed because I had like six hoodies on and I was just so freaking cold all the time. But handling social events, family gathering was like quite a challenge at first. And so how did you handle that? 'Cause I'm just trying to see if there's a few tools for people that they can be able to use, because maybe some people are going through the exact same thing as you. They're having gut issues or having migraines. I didn't want to make those changes, but I feel like that that
Yeah,
family social aspect is such a limiting factor for people to kind of make those
tough.
changes.
It's tough, man. And thank God for my mentor at the time because, I would, like, for example, my first year I was raw, I went Thanksgiving to my aunt's house. And I had a bowl like this and I cut up papaya, cut up mangoes, dates, and I brought that with some hemp seeds on it. And they're looking at me like, this is all you're going to eat. And I caught a lot of crap for a while because, being in an Italian family, I mean, it's not normal not to eat. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
everybody's eating all the time. I mean, everybody's taking food home. There's always leftovers. I mean, there's a lot of food. Even growing up, see, so when I was little, I was skinny, and everybody would always say, "You're just skin and bones. You got to eat. You got to eat. You got to eat." That's like the Italian culture. So yeah, when I was raw, it was a little challenging at first, but I learned to adapt. And I will say that's the one thing that right now I kind of because I would say I'm like mostly raw, and I'll have a cooked meal at night, or sometimes I'll like maybe once every couple weeks with friends go to a restaurant. But for the most part, I'm preparing all my food, making my juices and smoothies. But it is nice to be able to go to a restaurant. Back then, especially in Chicago, like if we had a family gathering, like I would just have to ask them, can you just give me a big salad with vegetables? And what I would do is I would make my own dressing at home, and then I would
Yeah.
bring like a little Ziploc bag of spirulina and hemp seeds and things to just like supercharge the salad. And it was a little uncomfortable because I'd have family from out of town that I didn't see, and they would look at me and think something's up. But ultimately, I knew I was looking good and feeling good, and I knew I was on the right path because of like what was happening with getting my certification at IIN and starting my platform. And I knew I was making a change and helping people. So I was selling
Yeah.
juices out of my house. I mean, it was much more productive and positive than my life was before. So
Yeah. So, I should have started with that at the beginning, but what does it, what is the standard for something to be considered raw vegan, right? Because I know there's like a certain degree that food can be cooked above. Like, what is raw vegan ultimately? What are the guidelines?
it depends. So yeah, so raw, it depends. Some people will say 118 degrees, some people will say 120, 128. And that's like if you put it in the dehydrator, but after you cook it past that level or heat it past that level, it kills the enzymes, which is ultimately the life force, right? So
Yeah.
that's what like charges the body. And it's crazy because it's true, because when you, for example, like when I was raw, the way I would explain it to people is like if you picked an apple off a tree and ate it right away, like you can feel that energy. And then if you watch the apple, it'll start browning fast. I mean, that doesn't happen with apples at the stores no more. But if you pick it off the tree, because I had an
Yeah.
apple tree by my house, and you can tell and you can feel that life. But if you take that apple and you cook it, you're killing the life force of it. So, and ultimately, like I was saying, when you start eating raw, it's like you can't help but when you're eating foods constantly connected to the earth, you can't help but start feeling more connected to nature and earth, right? So it was
Yeah.
it was just an awesome experience and just journey that I've been on.
Yeah, and like you brought up earlier, it changes you. You do become more compassionate. I haven't seen someone go plant based or go raw vegan and not become more compassionate, not become more empathetic. I feel like it's interesting how
Yeah.
the food changes you, but also the knowledge that you acquire through it will kind of change how you approach life.
It's really crazy, man, because and I think the people that have made that journey and really walked that journey, um, I mean, it is a drastic change. It's like you almost dying a life and being reborn. That's how it feels because you're so used to eating these empty calorie dead foods processed with chemicals and toxins that we don't know what they're doing to our body. And then all of a
Yeah.
sudden you start purifying it with juices and fresh fruits and all this organic stuff and juices, and you start eliminating and you start awakening. It literally like awakens your spirit. So and my mentor, that was like her favorite quote. It was that was her quote. Well, she like redid it, but it was, if you don't take care of your body, the most magnificent machine you'll ever be given, where are you going to live? And I never really got that until I went raw, and I'm like, wow, that is powerful. So
Yeah.
yeah, man, it's anybody who's gone through a drastic change, I have so much respect for, because it's hard. It is hard, especially with the people around you. I mean, I'm a Scorpio and I'm kind of like an extremist. So when I get into something and it's positive, like I go all in. But,
Yeah.
some people it's harder. I've coached people throughout the years that it's very difficult to make that transition because of the social aspect of it, or there's not access to the types of fruits and vegetables. When I lived in Chicago, I was grateful because I had this store called Caputo's, and they would get tropical fruits and coconuts, and I made a connection with the manager there, and he would always hit me up. Yo, we got dragon fruits, we got this much mangoes, we got boxes of coconuts, and I would go there and pick up like 4 boxes of coconuts. And so it's like when you're making that transition, you got to make those connections too. You can't stay in the same environment. It's almost like that you can't stay in the same environment you got sick in. You got to
Yeah.
create a new environment, a new positive one with people that are doing it, or whoever has access to this. I mean, you gotta do it.
Yeah, that's just a good trick. The store connection one. When Jen was sick, like we would do a lot of juicing. You're familiar with Gerson therapy?
100%. One of my really close friends had stage 4 and was told 6 months she had to live, and went to Gerson, reversed it, and opened a juice
Yeah.
bar in Chicago. When I met her, that's when I met her. She told me her story. But now she's in Colorado Springs. She's like 50 something years old, and she's 9 years cancer free now. So, I mean, she had a stressful job as well. It wasn't all diet, but yeah, Gerson changed her life.
Yeah, so we had Jen on that, and man, the amount of fruits and vegetables I had to buy, and it was like early COVID, everything got jacked up. So yeah, if you are wanting to buy a ton, like yeah, do make that connection with the store manager because you can just buy a case and you get the food for a fraction of the price compared to if you just buy them one at a time.
Absolutely.
Um, so talking about like buying food by the case, because I've seen your videos, I've seen your shelf with all of your fruits and your veggies. You're stacked up. Have you ever put an emphasis as to like trying to figure out how many calories you're consuming, making sure you're consuming enough? Do you worry about it? Do you put an emphasis on protein? Do you care about it? Just kind of curious as to your approach to it.
It's so funny you ask that, man, because I'm sure you're familiar with plant-based Ben, because
Yeah.
he's very like calories in, calories out. He's got everything down to a science, and we've talked many times. Because when I first started getting into boxing, I was like, I want to start doing this, and I was asking him questions, but I've never ever tracked anything. I mean, if there's a way I want to like look or be or feel or whatever, then maybe I'll start tracking it. But when I was raw, I would just eat. I would just eat, and if I felt like I needed some fat, I'd eat avocado, I'd eat coconut, I'd have a protein shake. Well, I mean, it was. I never counted calories, never paid attention to protein, nothing. I never, if something was wrong, I think the juice though had a lot to do with it, because I was and still juicing heavy greens, lots of green juices. And I mean, you're talking maybe 15 servings of vegetables and leafy greens and herbs. So, I felt like I was getting, it's almost like cheating, getting all these nutrients that you would eat. So my body would be
Yeah.
satisfied longer, you know what I mean? So I would do that and eat a lot of fruit and have my smoothies. And I always felt satiated.
Yeah. So actually, a question for you about making juices. I want to dive into some of your favorite recipes, some of like if you have some pre-workouts and post-workout ones. But there's at least that's what I learned from Gerson that when you make the juice, you ideally want to like drink it right after. So what's your thought on like storing it for the future? Because again, Gerson was very intense, right? It was like Jen had to do like 6 juices a day, and I would like basically make it, bring it to her, and she'd like chug it. But understand that not everyone's fighting
The
cancer
apple and the
before.
apple carrot.
Yeah, yeah, I had a lot of those.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So it's interesting that you say that. And when I first got into it, I bought a Breville, right? It was a Breville
Yeah,
centrifugal juicer, so it was very high powered. It sounds like you're putting an airplane off in the house. That's how loud it is. So, and it would
yeah,
oxidize the nutrients fairly quickly. I mean, if you juice in that and you juice in like a cold pressed juice, you could tell a difference. But I will say this: I know somebody also on that was online that did the Gerson with a Breville juicer. She didn't have the funds for a cold pressed juicer, and she was successful in uh, getting rid of the cancer. So, I mean, I guess do the best you can. There is truth to that for sure. But when I first got into it, I mean, I would juice with the Breville and I would keep it for a day, day and a half. I mean, I would juice pretty much every day, though. I would make the juices every day fresh, but there'd be times when I'd keep it. You just do the best you can. I mean, now I juice in a Tri-Best. It's called a Tri-Best Green Star, a new one that they just came out with. It's like $1,000 machine, and it's like twin geared, and it's like magnetic, and it's supposed to lock the nutrients back in. I mean, you could taste the difference. It lasts about 3 to 4 days. So it's just, I think, just it does. If you're going through something like that, I'd probably prefer something cold pressed.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, just a juicer in general. I mean, because some people, the cold pressed juices are harder to clean, and it's just a harder process.
Oh,
And if you get like the one I got in the beginning, it's got to shoot
yeah.
like this. You just throw everything in, boom, and it's inexpensive, easy to clean. So it's all about your budget and what you're using it for as well.
Yeah, we got the Nama with the hopper because I don't want to have to kind of like load it up. So the question for you is, do you prep all your juices in one go so that you don't have to clean it like 5 times a day? Because to me, that's the headache of it. It's like having to clean it so often.
Well, so I've been doing that. I've been making for like 2 days max with my Tri-Best. Because the reason why I love the Tri-Best cold press juicer as well is because it's very minimal pulp. It comes out very dry. You know, even some of these newer cold press juicers that are a few $100s, the pulp, there's a lot left over. And if you like threw it like in a nut milk straining bag, you could probably still extract a lot of juice. And this juicer does an amazing job, and the taste is potent. I mean, you throw a piece of ginger in there, and I mean, you feel it. It's not like a normal juice shot. So, um, but they also have another juicer called the Shine that I use, and last summer I used it every day because it's so easy to clean. I mean, so it just comes down to convenience. You know, it's like if I have a busier schedule and if I don't have as much time, maybe I'll just use that, clean it real quick, and then and then go. But lately I've been using my other one and preparing for a couple days and just leaving the mason jars in the fridge.
Nice. So actually, let's talk about some of your favorite juice recipe. So what is one that I'm sure you have one that you have every day, or do you like to kind of like vary it every single day?
No, there is one that I do every day. I do a green juice. That's what started my journey. It started with the green juice, and it's what is still a staple in my diet 11 years later. And it's something as simple as celery, cucumber, lemon, ginger, apple. And what I like to do is rotate the greens. So I'll either do a couple bunches of dandelions. The last one I did was just dandelion, cilantro, and parsley because it does an amazing job in extracting all the juice out of the greens. Spinach. Sometimes I do kale, chard. I mean, you can, and that's basically what I recommend to people because the celery and the cucumber is so good at extracting a lot of water out of them that and then the ginger kind of powerful anti-inflammatory. The lemon keeps it longer. So it's kind of like my staple, and then I like to just rotate the greens. Sometimes I have friends out here that juice sugar cane, so I get sugar cane. I drink that a lot. When it's watermelon season, man,
Yeah.
I go hard on the watermelon. Because you were saying pre-workout. I mean, uh, beets and watermelon are great for a pre-workout juice, but just every day, man. I mean, if I'm not eating watermelon, I'm juicing it. I love watermelon season. It's my favorite time of the year, especially now that like black seeded watermelons are back. So
Yeah. So actually, a few questions to that. I'm very curious as to the quantity that you put into your green juice for you to be able to fill out that massive of a jar. Because when Ivy and I were like doing some juices, man, I bought a 25-pound bag of like carrot and celery, and I was running through that shit, and I was like, man, this is not a lot of juice for you and I. So like how much celery, how much cucumber do you put in like one juice?
so yeah, so I'll tell you this. So I just made 64 ounces of green juices, right? And so what I did was 2 bunches of celery, 2 cucumbers. I did about 4 green apples, 2 lemons, a decent sized ginger, and then what I said with the dandelions, I did 2 bunches of dandelions, a bunch of celery, and a bunch of parsley. And that was roughly 64 ounces. So, like I said, it's more, and it's the longer Japanese cucumbers, not the small ones. So
Yeah.
the cucumbers and the celery will bring out a lot of juice for sure. So I know a lot of people
Yeah.
do the celery juice in the morning. That's pretty awesome too. I know a lot of people think it's a fad, but it's effective, man. You know, before I know medical media made it kind of mainstream, but the guy I told you I was following, Dan McDonald, he made a video on this like 20 years ago talking about how it helps restore hydrochloric acid in the gut, and then the celery salts help kill pathogens in the body and move the bowels, and it's a powerful drink in the morning, first thing in the morning. I mean, it'll get you going.
Yeah, yeah. Ivy and I were doing it for a little while. I know we traveled and then I forgot to buy celery and then the juicer's just been sitting there. But we need to get back to it. But yeah, we
Yeah,
definitely like a big difference on the gut because I'm kind of like you growing up, like a lot of that bodybuilder world. So a lot of whey protein, a lot of chicken, a lot of eggs. And it really messed me up. And then it got better when I went vegan. But still some work in progress, even almost a decade later now. Um, so you
yeah,
you brought
for
up
sure.
you brought up pre-workout. So I know beet for nitrate is really good with the blood flow. So what is in watermelon that would make it a good pre-workout, or is it that it tastes good before a workout?
It tastes good with the. There are some components to it. I mean, watermelon's like basically 90% water, but I don't know, the combination with that and beets. I mean, I feel more of an intense workout with the blood flow and everything. So um, between that, I also would throw like a little cayenne pepper, kind of speed the metabolism up a little bit. You can feel you sweat a little bit more as well. So I'll do like a beet, watermelon, cayenne, or sometimes I'll just do like a watermelon. Because like I said, I do watermelon a lot. I mean, I'll juice a lot of watermelon. And one watermelon, I mean, dude, you'll get close to a gallon, and if it's
Yeah,
organic, you can throw the whole thing. Because most people don't know this, but a watermelon has about 35 grams of protein, like a watermelon like this big with the shell. And if it's
yeah.
organic, you could eat the whole thing, juice the whole thing.
So out of curiosity, do you know how many calories would be in that full watermelon for 35 grams of protein? Because I didn't know there was 35 grams of protein in a watermelon.
I would say about three to 400. I mean, I'm guessing, but it would probably be around there. I feel like I've looked at it before, but I don't. I never really have paid attention with the calories in it. I
That's
just
so
know
interesting.
a long time ago when I was looking, it says that watermelons have a lot of protein, and I was like, wow. It's like when
Yeah,
you go vegan, it's like people are like, wait, where are you getting your protein? You're not eating animals. It's like, dude, watermelon. What? Every fruit has protein. It's just that we're not so focused and fixated on this bar has 25 grams of protein, and you know what I'm saying. So it's like when you're eating protein all day from you know easily digested and absorbable ways, you know, it's much different.
yeah.
It's not coming with all the waste and all the other crap that's in these bars and all the whey and all that stuff.
Man, I'll be honest with you. If it is 300 to 400 calories for like 35 grams of protein, that's pretty much equivalent to like a scoop and a half to 2 scoops of protein on a calorie content perspective and on a protein perspective. And you get a lot more volume from it.
Yeah,
That is so interesting. I'm definitely gonna have to. Man, I'm gonna
yeah.
try that. I'm gonna try and get some watermelon juice.
Oh, dude, game changer. I did a 5-day watermelon fast with, I'm not sure if you know who Dr. G is. I went on his podcast and I brought him some, but I was
The
like flying,
Gonzalez.
man. It was a five, yeah, Christian Gonzalez, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
And
he's cool.
but
He's
I
a
did
cool
a
guy.
5-day. He's a great guy, yeah. Um, but I've done that. That's the longest I ever did on watermelon. Some people call it Watermelon Island, where you're either eating or juicing it. But I just juiced it and made like 3 gallons at a time. I mean, just because when watermelon's in season, man, I get a cart and I back my truck up, and I mean, I put them all in my seats, and I put seat belts around them. Long seated watermelons. I mean, it's the
So
perfect meal. It's hydrating. It's filling. You just cut it open with a spoon and just go to work.
yeah, it's actually a question. I've heard you say you're putting a big emphasis on seeded, and I know why. But can you explain to people why you're putting an emphasis on seeded watermelon?
Well, it's like my friend Teresa was saying, because we grabbed a black seeded watermelon. This was last year, or no, 2 years ago. I'm sorry. And she took the seeds. She didn't even like sprout them or anything. She threw them in her yard. She grew watermelons last year. So it's
Nice.
like, when a fruit doesn't have a seed, it can't reproduce, so it's not natural. So I've always been taught you want something with the seed, especially if you can get it organic. So for a while, you couldn't get the black seeded watermelons at all. It was just seedless. And it didn't resonate with me initially. But when you actually think about it, it's like, how are they making this? And I mean, again, you
Yeah.
do the best you can. Because when I lived in Chicago, I couldn't get my hands on no black seeded watermelon. So I was doing seedless, and it was seedless organic, which to me still to this day doesn't make sense, you know.
Yep.
But yeah, I try to stay away from the genetically modified stuff. I mean, you can't find grapes that are seeded nowadays. You could find one
It's
place in LA,
tough.
but most, it's very tough. It's very tough. So, um, and there has to be a link, because it's like there has to be a link with sterilization with eating seedless food. You know what I mean? So I don't know.
Y-
I haven't looked that deep into it, but
Yeah. I'm on the same boat as you. I think, well, obviously, it is modified if there's no seeds, because if it was to be in nature, how would it reproduce itself? Like, how would it continue to grow if there's no seeds in it? It doesn't make sense. And it is tough. Even if you go to, like, again, if you want to ball out, go to Erewhon. But if you go to Whole Foods and all those other grocery stores, it's always going to be seedless, even the ones that are considered like healthy grocery store. Sometimes you go to like a Chinese market and then you'll
right.
find some like watermelon with some seeds, and then yeah, you load
Yeah.
up on them, or some grapes with some seeds. But it's hard for sure.
Yeah, there is sprouts. Sprouts for the last like 2 or 3 years, they always have seeded. So you could always count on them. And it's amazing because they're like this big and they're only like $5. Black seeded watermelon. So I'll go buy like six at a time, whatever I could
And
fill
so
fill my car with. So
how do you manage? Again, this is more of like a logistical question, but how do you manage going through that much produce and storing it into your house? Right? Because if you think of, like, you make the juice, you drink it within a day or two. So like, are you going to a grocery store every 2 days? Like, how are you structuring that?
farmers market or grocery store. Yeah, farmers market or grocery store pretty much every other day. Absolutely. I get
Okay.
a lot of frozen fruit as well. I will say that. Like my smoothies, I get a lot of like frozen wild blueberries. My freezer's packed with frozen fruit. So I always have like frozen bananas. And so my smoothies, I can, if I'm out of produce, I can make a smoothie, before I go to the store or the farmer's market. But the great thing about being in LA, and that's a big reason I moved out here, is there's a farmer's market every day. There's two
Yeah.
I live in Culver City. So there's two. There's one on Sunday and then there's one on Tuesday. So it's just they have one in Mar Vista on Sundays that's incredible. Santa Monica's got a couple. You got the wholesale market downtown. You can buy in bulk. But since I'm not eating raw like I did, because when I was eating raw, I mean, I was getting a lot of stuff at a time. I mean, you saw those racks were filled. But now it's
Yeah.
like I just make sure I have enough to make my juices, my smoothies, and then with eating a lot of more cooked now, obviously, like with dinner, like I've gotten into like different types of mushrooms and stuff. So yeah, it's a little bit easier to store the stuff that I do as opposed to like 4 papayas and boxes of mangoes and all these watermelons. So
Yeah. So would love to, like, I'm obviously, if you're comfortable with it, what made you want to, what made you stop going raw vegan? What made you start to eat cooked food? Because like when we met, that was one of the questions, right? I was like, hey, like, are you still raw because you were doing it for so many years?
yeah, yeah. So when I stopped was September 12th, well, and I'm sorry, September 12th, 2020, I lost my mother. And the next day I was out here in LA, and the next day I flew back to Chicago and with my girlfriend, and we went grocery shopping and got a bunch of stuff I normally would for raw. My mom had a Vitamix and a juicer and whatnot, and because that's where I stayed. And I didn't want to juice. I didn't want to do anything. And like for a day, I did not, about a day and a half, I didn't eat nothing, like literally nothing.
Yeah.
I was just like so in shock. And so, I mean, it was just a lot. It was a lot of emotions. And what my girlfriend did was, family was coming to the house because, my dad was, they were in an accident. And my stepdad had just gotten out of the hospital and he was there. So all the family kept coming in and out. So she started cooking, and she cooks like Mexican food and really good food, really good cooked food. And that's when I started. She was in my mom's kitchen, in my mom's space, and I smelt the food, and it was just the comfort of just being around the family and eating food. And I just didn't, I'm just like, I'm gonna eat some cooked food. It just, to me at the time, was comforting, and that's how it started. And it's crazy because going through the grieving process, and I stopped. I stopped a lot of stuff. I mean, I'm never stopped being vegan, but I started eating a lot of, restaurant food and a lot of garbage vegan food, and wasn't moving, wasn't juicing like I was. And so it took me a while to get that back. But that's what started the cooked food.
Yeah. Which again is understandable, man. I'm with you. You don't eat for a few days, you feel off for months to years after. And that's why, like, when we reconnected, I was like, we were both in a very different place. And so, well, I'm happy that you are eating at the restaurant now, so I can go to the restaurant with you when we catch up. Your girlfriend has a restaurant, right? Out in San Diego.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
What is it called the Village or something like that?
Yes. Yeah, it's called the
Okay.
Village. It's half Japanese, half Mexican.
Yeah. I think I told you, right? I went there with Brian Turner. He was like, we
Yes.
we
Yes,
have to
you did.
go there. It's
You did.
Yeah, it was delicious. So I'm excited for us to have a meal
Awesome.
together
Yeah,
because
it's good
last
stuff.
time in Vancouver we were at meat, and then I think there was only like a salad available for you. That's with Tori and Dom and everyone.
I remember that. I remember that. It was a good salad though. I remember it was a decent sized salad bowl. I mean, it was good. That's the one thing being raw that sucked is like you go to like a vegan restaurant or something with vegan options. It's like you can't get a salad. I'm like, man, they should be having for especially vegans, like they should have big salads. Why not? That's how I used to eat. That would be like a big meal for me, a big salad loaded with vegetables and a really good dressing. But
Yeah, and I feel like I think it's good to kind of blend both of them as well. So it's kind of nice that you're still juicing and doing the smoothies, but you're including some cooked food from time to time. Like, did your stomach feel any sort of way as you added cooked foods? Because I did for sure, even after just 6 months.
I probably put on 15 pounds in like a year of crap. And it
Yeah,
probably wasn't that noticeable, but again, I wasn't really on social media a lot during that time. I was grieving and I wasn't going to when I came on, I talked about the experience. I talked about what I was going through. I was never trying to fake. I said I was eating cooked food. I said I was grieving. I said, so I was kind of just going through the process, and it took me a while to get like kind of balanced to like, hey, I can't be eating like this because, and it's so crazy because being on that journey, it showed me once again, it was hard to pick myself up. And it wasn't just the grieving, it was the food. Like how
yeah,
we were saying food is everything. It's like I wasn't juicing. Like every once in a while I'd have a juice. I was eating a lot of crap and I felt like crap, didn't have the energy to do stuff. My creativity wasn't there, like with doing content. So it's like and it took me like a year and a half. Like, granted, I was still getting content for companies I was working for monthly, but it was coasting. It wasn't like I wasn't in the flow. I wasn't living fully that lifestyle. So, but once I did, I started taking these Puridyme supplements with enzymes and these, cleanse powders with psyllium husk, and this supplement company is awesome. But I was doing that, and I did a 96-day protocol, drinking 3 of these a day, 3 juices a day with these 42 supplements, and I would have a raw meal at night, and that kind of brought me back. It wasn't a raw. I'm sorry, not raw. It was a cooked meal at night, But that kind of brought me back. It started helping me eliminate and bringing energy and flow back into the body. And I started feeling myself again. And then I started working out again. But it just goes to show you, man. I mean, most people, and even I'll even say this, most vegans I know don't even juice, don't do a lot of
Yeah.
smoothies. They're eating a lot of the other stuff, man. And it's like, wow, it's like you're vegan, but you're not, you know what I'm saying? Like when we were at that thing, I was talking to somebody about juicing for like an hour at the
Yeah.
Christspiracy thing and had never juiced. And he was like 7 years, or not that he never juiced, he just doesn't. And he's like, I feel
Yeah.
like crap. And I'm like, dude, you got to incorporate this stuff. At least use it as a tool, you know, to drink one every day to help your taste buds kind of gravitate more towards the good food. And because that's what it does. It kind of resets your taste buds the more you drink it, especially if you're on a cleanse. And it kicks all those cravings, those salts, those sugars, all the processed junk that we get, that, you know, the foods that are chemically engineered that keep us addicted to them. So I get it. You know, I was there before I went vegan, and then it took me a while to get over the hump, especially 40 years old, you know, because this happened, you know, with my mom. I just turned 40. So it was much harder than it is when you're like 28 trying to get in shape. So
Yeah. Yeah, and I feel like you mentioned earlier you just passed a decade of being on this lifestyle. I'm going on a decade in October this year, so like you went a little bit earlier than I did, but man, it was so much easier to be like whole food plant based and eat whole foods 10 years ago when we started, because like you said, Amy's, Oreos, like tofu that was banana flavored, and then yeah, that was you having a good time. That's all you could have. But now it's so much more challenging. And man, people like I said, you and I went through some shit. A lot of people go through some shit, and it's like the food is there, the comfort food is there, and the vegan comfort food is there now. And so, yeah, like it is challenging to pick yourself back up. But I love what you said. You didn't necessarily focus on like, I got to go and exercise. I got to force myself to be more creative. You're like, let me just clean up my food. And then these other things kind of happen by default. Like you start to feel better and start being more creative. Therefore, you were more creative. Therefore, you had more energy. Therefore, you could work out. It's like you focus on the food first, which I guess is really smart.
yeah, man. And like I said, like when my mom passed, that was in 2020. So that was like during COVID where gyms were
Yeah.
closed. So what started bringing me back, honestly, my movement that was bringing me back was Noah. I was walking 3 times a day with him, like long walks. And
Yeah.
that was my exercise. Just moving every day. It was so big for me because I would take Noah to the park and let him run, you know, and
Yeah.
that's what I would always do. I'd take him to the park, let him run. He'd go crazy for like an hour, and then maybe I'd take him for a small walk. But now, I still have the routine. We walk like 3 half-hour to 45-minute walks a day, you know, in Culver City. We go all over town, and sometimes like we'll be just walking down the street, and he'll just kind of look at me and dictate the walk. Like I'm pulling him because I want to get back home, and he takes me
Yeah.
another 15 minutes, you know. So and that's amazing for people that are listening too. I always have told that to people that are, you know, that I've coached in the past. It's movement is so essential. You know, it's like if you can't get up and down a basketball court, if you can't go to a class, walk. Just walk outside.
Yeah.
Just start walking. And even my mom, you know, my mom reversed heart disease as on a plant-based diet. You know, like there's more to my mom's story because you know she died in an accident, but she was on 7 medications, had a heart attack, but she adopted this lifestyle as well. And before she passed, was like 3 years vegan, lost like 25 pounds. And as a heart patient, we walked to this park by my mom's house, and I'm like, Mom, you should walk this every day. She goes, I can't. I'm a heart patient. And I go, Mom, don't tell yourself you're a heart patient. You're affirming that's what you are, you know. And
Yeah.
when she started going vegan, and when she started changing her life, I'll never forget the last year I was out there. We went to the park. It's like 1.2 miles, and dude, she did it like nothing. And that was like a few months before she passed, you know, but it just showed like she got in the routine and she was walking every day and she was walking with neighbors. And I remember like a year prior to that, like she wasn't doing that, or it was like 2 years, but you know, and I would only come in like 3 times a year. So I would never like see her routine. So luckily the 2020, when I went in for June for her birthday, she took me there in the morning and I was out of breath. I couldn't believe it, you know? So it's so essential, man. Just moving and believing. You know, it's so hard when to get yourself up. Like I said, when I was after my mom passed and I was like in a lower spot, it was very hard to get motivated to move. You know, like I said, Noah did it, but once I started walking and walking a little more and walking a little more, and then it turned into I'm gonna start going to the gym now when the gyms start opening. And now I'm gonna start lifting little weights. Now it's to the point where I go to boxing every day, sometimes twice a day, because it's gotten me back in shape, you know? So it doesn't have to be crazy at first, but, you know, just walking, rebounding. Rebounding is very powerful too. Getting a little mini trampoline and just doing 15 minutes a day on YouTube, you know, moving the lymphatic system, get an exercise on YouTube.
Yeah. And I think there's something so powerful to the aspect of you just taking it one step at a time, right? Because I feel like so many people, when they are in that slump, they're like, yeah, I just want to go to the gym 6 times a week and train for 2 hours every single time. But they miss the aspect of like, hey, like your mom, if it can just start with going for a walk, like the body will get used to it and it'll adapt. And eventually you'll be able to do more, maybe to the place where you start doing, air squats at the park, right? Push ups on a bench, and you just kind of work up your way. But people miss that part. They're like, nah, I want to jump on top of the mountain right away and be able to do everything. And that's when people get discouraged, and then they never actually end up making progression.
Yeah,
um yeah, and it's powerful what you said to your mom too, right? Don't identify as this thing.
exactly. And that's what a lot of us do. It's because we can't help it because we do develop when you start eating that way and we start developing these habits. And if we have a 9 to 5, we don't have the energy. So the energy we do have, we'll do it maybe twice a week, and we won't see the results as fast as we want. You know, everybody wants something fast, and it's really comes down to a lifestyle change. You know, you have to really be committed to say, hey, I want a better life. I want to be healthier. I want to be looking like this. I want to feel like this, and then do it little bit at a time. You're not going to go from A to Z overnight, you know, little at a time.
Yeah, well, I want to there's 2 points I want to touch on. One is Noah, your dog, because obviously I feel like I would get some pretty nasty comments online if I don't bring up your dog in this podcast interview. So when did Noah become a superstar? How did all of this started? And I think you told Ivy and I that he's vegan as well. So would love to kind of hear you share on that, because a lot of people have questions as whether it's doable for their own dog.
Yeah, absolutely. So we saw Earthlings in 2014, March 2014. We went vegan overnight, March 21st. In September, we adopted Noah. So, and he was an adopted dog. He was a rescue. And, you know, I had grown up with German Shepherds all my life, but my girlfriend was like, oh, I want a Yorkie, or I want something small. And I was
Yeah.
looking online and I saw this Yorkie. I'm like, he's beautiful. And, you know, he was only like 6 months at the time or something. They said like 6 to 8 months because we gave him his own birthday. He has his rescue day and then we gave him his own birthday. Um, and it was just so funny, man. It was so natural because I would start that juicer up in the kitchen and he would go crazy. He would run to me, jump on my leg, and I'm like, what do you want? So I would just like grab a piece of kale. He'd mulch it, eat the whole thing. Carrot. And at the time when I first adopted him, my mentor Karen, she was getting bison from a guy that was, you know, he was killing his own food, and she would give him to the dog. So she was giving it to me because it was raw meat. But
Yeah.
then, you know, I started seeing how Noah was loving vegetables. I mean, there wasn't a vegetable he didn't like. So I started looking into that. And then I saw like a bunch of vegan people were already having their dogs on vegan diets that were, you know, reducing inflammation, reducing heart issues. Like I was reading all this stuff and I'm like, I didn't know this was possible. You know, I thought dogs were all carnivores. So as time went on, researching more and more, like a year later, he became fully vegan. You know, we looked into Guinness Book of World Records. One of the oldest dogs was like 27 years old, Bramble, vegan diet. You know, it was a very simple vegan diet. So, got a couple books on it, did some research, and we actually created our own ebook on it. And yeah, I mean, Noah's been vegan almost 9 years now.
Wow.
And he gets
Yeah.
blood work. He gets blood work every 6 months. He just had blood work. We have a vegan vet, and he gets his teeth. He has a dentist that comes to the house, and you can see his energy and his glow is, you know. And what's amazing too is not only does he eat the vegetables, and like we'll make him even like a grain like fonio. We'll do that like with sweet potatoes and beans, and we also throw like sea moss in there. He loves sea moss. He
Yeah.
loves chlorella. He loves spirulina. Like he licks this stuff out of the bag. Like it's amazing. I mean, I think I was just truly blessed because he eats a lot of foods that are, that most dogs that have come over, they're like, I don't want none. So,
Yeah. Yeah, and you make a lot of cute videos with them. So just also for the people listening, I'll put the link to your Instagram below so people can kind of check out those videos. But I think you got lucky because man,
yeah,
Tempe, I will give him I'll give him certain vegetables and he'll like bite them and then like just drop them on the ground and then he'll just like leave them there and never touch them again. Or I'll give him some like broccoli and he'll like just
yeah.
completely chow down on it. But yeah, some of it he'll just like bite it, make a mess out of it, and leave it on the ground and never touch it. So we're still training him.
Dude, I mean, it's so funny. I've done lives before when I'm juicing, and Noah will just bark and bark and bark, and I'll show the people, look at how crazy he gets. And I'll show them, I'll either give him a carrot or whatever it is, and he'll go and eat it. And he'll eat it all. Like, he won't leave any traces of it. He'll eat the whole carrot in one sitting, come back for like a cucumber. It's nuts, man. Yeah, it's, like I said, it's a blessing. And I'll say when I started incorporating them in my videos was when, Jonny Juicer, the brand and what I do kind of like really took off because at the time I was just doing a lot of juicing videos, recipes. I was going through my transformation, and I'll never forget. It was a summer. I did a watermelon video. It was my first video ever with Noah when Instagram only had like 15-second videos. And I sliced a watermelon, opened it up, stuck a spoon in it, had a mini watermelon, sliced it up, made little lemon or watermelon balls. Like it was a very fast video. And I
Yeah.
whistled, and Noah came in, and he started eating the watermelon with me. And that video just started getting views and shares. And at the time, like Instagram was so different. And
Yeah. The
I
good
was
days.
averaging like 1,000 followers a day. It was crazy. It was crazy. So I'm like, man, this is something here. People like dogs, and I'm
Yeah.
throwing the health in, and from there I just kept going.
That's funny. I always make jokes about Tempe. I was like, you better go shake your butt on Instagram and pay for rent, man, because you're expensive. All of his food and all his treatments. Um, yeah,
Yeah,
those were the good old days of Instagram. I remember there's like kind of the Vine days, right? When Vine was a thing, and then Instagram kind of made 15-second reels to trying to compete against
yep,
it.
yep,
Yeah,
yep. I remember that time. That was like the golden age of social media, man. It was amazing. A lot of people were going vegan. A lot of people were creating their businesses there, and the algorithms and everything have changed everything. It's gotten really crazy, man. But during that time, I remember it was nuts. It was fun. It was fun times.
yeah. The organic algorithm was amazing. Now it's shit. You have to pay for every single reach that you get.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I was gonna say you have to like strategically see what's this and what it's nuts. It's nuts. It can't just be an organic, creative thing that you come up with, throw out there, and it's like the reach goes. So it's whatever the
yeah,
algorithm wants.
yeah. Pretty much. And there's some trickery into it to kind of make it work. I've managed to find a few ways to make it work for myself, but you guys will see as this podcast goes live, I will
Yeah.
use some of those trickery to get more listens and views. That's what I did for every episode.
Yeah.
So, Matt, would love to ask you for like a piece of advice for the people listening, because obviously you've gone through a pretty wild transformation for yourself physically and from a health standpoint, and just overall in your life, you've had a lot of kind of challenges that you've overcame, and you're in this beautiful place now. And so, what is a piece of advice that you would share to someone that is in is in the mess basically, or is about to get in the mess? Like, how can they better equip themselves with, again, knowledge, tools, mindset to be able to move forward and to continue to stay healthy and to continue to kind of keep their head up?
Yeah. No, for sure. I think. when we got into it, back then, it was like doing a juice cleanse, it was like a luxury. Now it's like you must eat healthy because I mean, we're getting bombarded by the air, water, our food, everything's toxic. So it's like even now you have to be extra on it. So, but what I would personally say is this, man. I saw the trajectory of where my life was going. I used to tell my mom all the time because I would party to like from Thursday to Sunday, go drinking. I would only drink. I never did drugs or nothing like that. But I would drink and eat like crap, and my mom would be like, "You're crazy. You didn't get home until like 5 in the morning." She's like, and I'm like, "Mom, I would tell her this. If I die by the time I'm 40, at least I lived happy life." And it's like when I think of that, I'm like, I was so depressed during that time and I had no purpose and I was not doing nothing but numbing myself from this cycle of, being a basketball player, you're like, yeah, I'm going to play in the NBA at some time because, every kid thinks that when they're growing up, they're like, oh,
Yeah.
basketball is it. That's what I want to do when I get older, and then I got into this truck driving job. And then before you know it, it's like I'm 30 and I'm like, what am I doing with my life, and I was just in this toxic cycle. And on the whole other side, man, there's this whole other life of living your best life, feeling great every day, not being in fear of getting sick or getting disease because it's not just the food we're eating, it's like getting outside and being able to move your body, like what we were talking about. Like I'm going to be 43. I'm so grateful that I can go to a boxing class and keep up with kids that are in their 20s, and feel great and look good and that's my motivation for as I get older. I want to be an inspiration to people that are in their 20s and 30s now that say that guy's 42. Like, what's he doing? On the whole other side of that, there's a whole nother life of this, of health, of living with purpose, being an inspiration, and just making this place a better place. It's not just ultimately when you heal yourself. It's like they say in the airplane. It's like put on your mask before you help somebody else. It's exactly the same. It's like when you take care of yourself, when you love yourself, like truly love yourself, you can take care of so many people. Because not
Yeah.
if they're not if they're not like watching you, your energy and what you're doing is going to emanate because it's so easy to tell somebody, hey, you should go vegan or you should, start juicing. But if you're not living the script, if you're not living it, if you don't look like you're doing it, they're not really going to listen. But, I've been doing this for so long. Everybody in my family has a juicer. They're not necessarily vegan, but they're more health conscious, because of that. So you don't know how many people you're impacting. Obviously you're helping yourself, but you're also impacting so many. And and this is the last thing I'll say, when I go back to Chicago, everything's the same. People are still living their lives, still doing their 9 to 5s. So step outside of that, man. Take the leap because not only are you going to improve your health, you're going to improve your whole life, and then you're going to be able to inspire others. It's a message.
Yeah. I think that's beautiful. There is something to, I relate to going back home and everything being the same and people living in the same house, doing the same job, eating the same way, doing the same thing. And, I guess people come to LA because they view life differently and they approach life differently, or else you and I wouldn't be here doing what we do. But there is something about, yes, changing your nutrition, changing your fitness, your circle, but man, just removing yourself from the environment that you grew up in and putting yourself in an environment where people are doing things differently. Like you can't not grow if you get to a place like this where people are thinking like you and I. Like just by default, you're going to grow. By default, you're going to think differently. By default, you're going to eat healthier. And so I think there is something to removing yourself from your environment, like literally physically removing yourself and putting yourself into another one that forces you to have a complete different life.
Absolutely. Especially in the climate we were in, right? It's like in Chicago, nothing's growing. But you come out here in California during this time and you're picking citrus off the trees and getting sunshine and maybe even having a surf day. You know what I mean? But in Chicago, you're
Yeah.
staying in, ordering food. And I remember that, man. And it's like, and it got to a certain point when it's like, hey, I want the sun every day. The sun's important to me. Good food is important to me, and it was hard leaving, but when I
Yeah.
knew what I wanted a better life, that became priority to me. You could always go back home.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Jonny, where can people find more or learn more about the work that you're doing? Because I know you do some coaching as well. You obviously create some great content. So where can people learn more about that?
Yeah, I mean, you can just go to my website, jonnyjuicer.com. I mean, from supplements I do to, events or retreats I'm going to do or whatever, everything is through jonnyjuicer.com. But most of my content is funneled through Instagram. So that's Jonny_Juicer on Instagram. I do have a YouTube. I don't do much on there as I used to. I just do more content there, and everything else is funneled through my website.
Beautiful. So for everyone listening, I will put all the links down below in the description. So you can go support Jonny on Instagram if you don't already follow him. Check out the website. Jonny, brother, massive thank you, man, for taking the time to jump on. I really appreciate you. I appreciate you as a friend. I'm happy that we just got reconnected after all these years. And as people get busy, but then you reconnect with the right person at the right time. So I'm excited for us to see each other next week, ultimately. And yeah, big thank you, man.
You said it perfect, man. Like, we run into people that we don't see for years, but there was a connection and it was the right people. Because when I saw you again, man, it felt good. It felt good communicating with you, and it's rare you find people in the lifestyle that you can like feel heart to heart and that are genuinely good people. There's a lot of facades on social media, so
For
I
sure.
really respect that about you, and it's been good reconnecting.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that. And so, again, for everyone listening, be sure to support the podcast episode. If it resonated with you, share it with someone that would benefit from it. Because man, Jonny's a good guy. He's doing some amazing work. Again, he does some coaching as well, so you guys can check that out. And we'll see everyone in the next episode. Bye.